It comes out of a family history of heart disease, of diabetes, of kidney disease. As I sit here today, my father is still alive. Wonderful man I respect dearly. Has had 2 quadruple bypasses, heart bypasses. Has been a type 2 diabetic since, in the mid 80s. So a long-term type 2 diabetic, stage 3 kidney disease. So lots of really intense issues. By the way, both of his parents had diabetes, and I believe both of them passed away of heart attacks.
Hi, welcome back to Carnivore Nation, and today's special guest is Mark. Now, Mark, from conversations I've had with you leading up to this today, I'm convinced you are my brother from a different mother. Would you like to introduce yourself to the viewers?
Yeah, good morning, Carl. I know it's morning here. It is actually about a little after 6:30, so I know it's early afternoon for you. Yeah, my name is Mark Caldwell. I live here in Atlanta, Georgia. Real quickly, I was actually born and raised in England. I was in England, Iceland, and Germany until I came to the States when I was 16. My father was in the Air Force. Mother was from Braintree in Essex. That's where I was born. Yeah.
Well, I'm from Ipswich, so we're nearly neighbours, so we may be related after all.
So we actually could be brothers from another mother. So the reason I'm here today, Carl, is fairly interesting to me. I've spent my life as an overweight adult. Yep, super skinny kid growing up, always very active. Went to college, actually went to the University of Michigan, and gained 90 pounds over my first couple of years in college. I got into weightlifting. I was a skinny kid swimmer in high school, then got into weightlifting, stopped weightlifting, and just kept eating and eating and eating and drinking. Quite frankly, it's a hobby I picked up at university as well. So gained 90 pounds during my college years, and then got married shortly after, had my first child at 25, and then just kept growing and growing and growing. So having met you a couple of days ago here online, I think that's where our conversation will go, is that journey for me from being the skinny kid to the not just overweight but obese adult, and how I believe that was so life-threatening that I had to do something about it and take responsibility and go on from there.
Well, obviously the thumbnail, which I'm just flashing up now, talks it now. It's quite a clear statement there. So do you want to take us through from when you're getting to the point that you felt that it was getting very risky for you life-wise, or what the background is to making you think that way?
Sure. Yeah. So both my parents grew up with very, I'm going to say poor. I mean, my father was part of the Salvation Army, was part of raising him as a child. My mother, again, very little in terms of any financial stability growing up. And my father joined the U.S. Air Force back when he was 17, literally, to get 3 meals a day, that kind of thing. So met my mom when he was stationed overseas, and we grew up, again, with very little. So to the point where I say to people, I didn't have my first piece of steak, until I was in high school. We were the typical family that had very little financially, and then got to a point where got to college and you're living in the dormitories and all the food is free. And so you just eat and eat and eat and eat. Right. And so what I would say is this: even though we didn't have much, I was raised with this one idea in my head, is that you eat fat, you get fat. Right? You eat fats, you get fat. So for the most part, we were, we ate as healthily as it was possible on what we had. And where I'm going with that is I have a light switch personality. I know that about myself. So if I do something, I do it, and I do it with all of my heart, like eating or drinking, or I don't, right? Or I go the other direction. And I think that'll become important later on as we're talking here this morning, Carl, because it has to do with, I think, some of the success that I'm having, if you can call it that, on the carnivore diet, is that I'm into this thing, right? I'm doing this. I'm not, I'm not cheating. So except for a couple of areas that we'll talk about as well. So what's led us down this path? I think the thumbnail that you put up brings back lots of emotions and lots of feelings when I see the big me. And the reason why I say that is because the big me is that big me, though, by the way, that picture here was me in 2023, right? January 2020. We were talking about 14 months ago, actually 16 months ago. So this is the guy that I got to look in the mirror at for the bulk of my entire adult life. So think of this: I'm a husband of 35 years. I'm married to a woman who I'm 6'1". She's 5'3". She's tiny. I'm huge, right? So, but when she marries me, I'm a fairly muscular, large guy. I was always the guy that said I'm big boned, right? Because I'm wide shoulders. I'd carry my weight better. And all of a sudden, I just get bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's interesting to me that as I look around today, everyone is big. I mean, just everyone. It is really striking. I'll share this, Carl. When I came to the States at 16, I got off the plane. I got here 3 months earlier than my parents were coming back. They were closing up the household over there and moving back to the States with me. I came over because of the way the school system was at the time. I came to live with my U.S. grandmother up in Michigan. When I got off the plane by myself in Detroit, Michigan, back when I moved back, I was walking through the airport and I remember distinctly, it struck me that the people here are so large. They're massive compared to England, which we had just moved from. Oh my gosh, it was absolutely stunning. And now I go back to England even, and I'm going back here this next month in June. And I typically would go back 3 or 4 times a year. It's amazing how large the people there are now. It's incredible how I think this is an epidemic everywhere. So, and again, you're going to see this a lot from me. I tend to talk all the way around until I get to the actual point.
That's an interesting point, because the other night, my wife and I, Inga, we watched an old Hitchcock film, Frenzy, which is based in London.
Yeah.
And when you saw anyone in the background in the shot, there was not a single obese person. Now, I go to London now, and I'm struggling to see the skinny guy. So that change has happened in the UK, but, you know, they always say the American diet, and Britain's kind of followed that high-fat, convenience food diet. So, no, sorry to interject there, but, you know, It was really interesting. And that film was made in 74, I think. So
Carl, I don't remember, and I'm not fat shaming when I say this. Honestly, that's a term over here. I don't know if you guys use that term at all. As much as I grew up in England, I left when I was 16. So now I'm 59. I turned 60 this year. So it's been a long time. I'm not trying to fat shame. What I am trying to say, because I was one of those guys, right? And hopefully I never am there again. And we'll talk about that later too. When I think back to high school, I went to 4 different high schools, by the way. When I think back to high school, I don't remember a single overweight kid, not one. I don't. So I thought about that, and I was talking to my wife about that comment, and I went back to my yearbook, and I didn't see any. And now you just look at our schools, and they're full of kids that are overweight, full of kids. Yeah. And this is after, of course, you know, I came to the States in 1980. Is in the mid to late 70s is when they came out with the standard American diet, right? SAD. And it is truly amazing to me how the government comes out with all these guidelines on what our American diet ought to be to make us more healthy. And by far, it appears, just even visually, let alone, I think, with all the anecdotal information that we can talk about today, that we are overwhelmingly a much more unhealthy people than we were back in the 80s.
I saw a brilliant thing on social media the other day that the marketing person that put the S in fast foods was a genius, because you take the S out of fast foods, it says fat food.
That's right. Well, you know, again, when I left the UK, I don't remember there being any McDonald's. Now they're everywhere. I just don't remember it. And it's striking.
Wimpy was the only one I can recall as a youngster. We used to occasionally have a Wimpy.
You know, when I grew up, you know, my favorite meal is like, you know, fish and chips. Although for us it was a sausage and chips, because mom and dad had the fish, and it was more expensive than the sausage and chips. So, but that's back when it was all wrapped in newspaper too, right? So
yeah, you can't do that anymore.
So when you have when you show that picture of, I'm going to call that big me instead of fat me, but they're the same thing. I was 280. I'm 282.2 pounds. So I have a lot of this here. So I did my conversions so that for everybody in the UK looking here, that was 128 kilos. I mean, that's right. That's 20.1 stone. That's bad, right? I was 282.1 pounds, which puts me in spitting distance, 17 plus pounds within 300 pounds. And I'm telling my wife, I got off the scales that morning. And by the way, another thing I hold is this. I'll talk about this here in a moment. This log that I keep, it is years of logs that I keep. And I'll talk about that here in a second.
You're clearly very detailed.
And I'm trying to hold myself accountable. I sit down with my wife that morning. I said, hey, I need to share this with you. I said, I got off the scales this morning. And she goes, yeah. And she's, I mean, just wonderful in terms of not making me feel ashamed or anything else. I'm telling you, I said, I weighed 282 pounds this morning, just a little over. She goes, oh my, what are you going to do about it? I said, honey, I'm going for it. She goes, what do you mean you're going for it? I said, how many people get to say they're 300 pounds? I'm going for it. Total joke, obviously. But I mean, I literally was in 18 pounds of being 300 pounds, which is by any stretch is obese, right? So, I mean, I decided once again, going on that yo-yo diet as an adult, going up and down, up and down, up and down. The flavor of the month for me for basically the last 6 years, which is what these logs are here in front of me, it was the Eat to Live diet. Do you know what that is? Eat to Live.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
It's a strictly vegan / vegetarian diet. So it's all plants, low fat. And that was the idea. So I'm going back here. These are my logs back to 2018. And every single morning, what you'll see on my logs is every morning, and this every morning since, not since 2018, since 2012. Every morning I get up and I test my blood pressure, my blood sugar. So I poke my finger every morning. I'm not diabetic, but we'll talk about that too. I record my weight. And if I did any exercise, for here it says swim because I was a swimmer in high school. So for me, I was very, very thin. I was tall and super thin when I went into college, but again, stopped swimming, started eating, started weightlifting, that kind of thing, right? So my first day of Eat to Live on Saturday, July 21st of 2018, which is when this log started, again, part of the yo-yo diet, I weighed 258.4 pounds. Okay, so By the way, 258.4 pounds when I started the carnivore diet this last August. And again, we'll get into the details there. I weighed 257.1 pounds, regardless of the kilos. That's 18.3 stone, 116 kilos. So to make the point is I was a pound different over 5 years apart, right? So you get the point. I went up and down over all the years, and I kept this weight between 258 and 282 pounds. So the last time I'll do the conversion, everybody can do that with a calculator, between 116 and 128 kilograms, always up and down, until I would go on like one of these hardcore, let's really make a difference here, 6 to 12 weeks of hardcore dieting, watching everything I eat, measuring everything out. And I might drop down to 230 or so, which again, I just lied, maybe 100 kilos or so. And then I would jump back up. So that's what the logs are about. One is clearly, I know I'm very aware there's an issue. I'm logging things. When there are breaks, and you'll see every once in a while, and I didn't plan to go on this path, you'll see where I still continue to take my blood pressure and blood sugar that morning, but I don't record my weight. And that's because I don't like to record the weight when it's going up. I like to record the weight when it's coming down, right? So I think that's human nature. But that's a long way to say is I'm all about logging. I'm all about data. And that has a lot to do with why I'm on carnivore right now, because right now I'm learning a lot about data. I'm not suggesting at all, Carl, this is the diet for everyone. This is what works for me. And I'll tell you why it works for me. But let's get back to what I was talking about a moment ago is why we're here today from my standpoint, right? I made a comment to you the other day when we were talking about what kind of thumbnail and what the theme of this should be. And I said, Carl, I don't even have to think about it right now. I said, carnivore diet, I think, has saved my life. And you said, really? I said, yeah. And let me tell you why. I'm going to paint a picture for you, just a mental picture real quickly here. And I'm looking at my other piece of paper right here. I have a whole list of stuff I want to make sure I remember. Family history, before you get to me, because I started November 15th, 1964, I was only 7.7 pounds. So I wasn't obese yet, right? So it's almost 60 years ago. I'm just a little kid that comes out of a family history of heart disease, of diabetes, of kidney disease. As I sit here today, my father is still alive. Wonderful man I respect dearly, has had 2 quadruple bypasses, heart bypasses, has been a type 2 diabetic since, in the mid 80s. So long-term type 2 diabetic, stage 3 kidney disease. So lots of really intense issues. By the way, both of his parents had diabetes, and I believe both of them passed away of heart attacks. So my paternal side of my family is full of stuff, right? My mother's is less so, but I honestly don't know who my real grandfather is and my biological grandfather. So I don't know what's on that side. I know my mother has had some health issues, but nothing as extreme as is on my paternal side. So I know, right? I know going into, as I start to going into adulting, that I need to be careful, and I'm not, right? Because I do things or I don't, and I had too much fun doing a lot of things I was doing. Again, we'll cover some of that. So having said that, what about me? Let's just go back to August 28th of 2023. So we are literally talking about 9 months ago, just shy of 9 months ago. I'm very typically, I wake up that morning, I'm obese, right? So I'm, at the time, I'm 257.1 pounds. Okay. And that this is, we're talking about less than 9 months ago. I'm, I've got high blood pressure. That noise, I'm sorry, something is, we have a bunch of deer outside and they keep walking in front of the door of the barn here. So that that chime you're hearing is it's catching the deer.
Okay.
So I've got high blood pressure. I'm on a medication for high blood pressure. I've got high cholesterol. I'm on a statin, of course. We'll talk about statins. I have arthritis in both knees, to the point where an orthopedic surgeon has told me, you will at some point here fairly soon have new knees. Get ready for that. And so I was walking around, when I could walking around with horribly painful knees all the time, to the point where we have multiple cars and I have canes in each of my cars. I live on a bunch of land out here in North Georgia, up near the mountains, and so we've got a couple of 4x4s. I have canes everywhere. I mean, it's the strangest thing, because when I can walk, I was walking with canes, and anyways, lots of show and tell stuff here. I have bad cases of gout in my feet, mostly in my right foot, but typically one or the other. I have kidney stones, which I couldn't get rid of. I had 9 or 10 episodes at that point of kidney stones. And if you've never had a kidney stone, that's enough to scare you. I tell my wife they're worse than pregnancy. She can laugh. And I said, it's like passing a bowling ball around barbed wire through your pee-pee. It's not fun. So lots of issues with that. Reality is, Carl, this is me doing this. I'm Mark Caldwell. I'm responsible for the consequences of my actions. I'm not a victim. Right? That's a lesson I used to teach my kids: is look in the mirror, get to know you. I mean, stare in the mirror at yourself for a couple of moments and get to know you and know what you stand for, and do that routinely, right? So I didn't used to like to look in the mirror, to the point where, Carl, if I had my shirt off and I walked in the bathroom, I wouldn't look in the mirror. I would not look at myself. I was embarrassed, right? And so this was a day on on August 28th of 2023 where I raised my hand and I look at myself and I say, look, shirt off, looking in the mirror, and I can show you some pictures of that if you really want to see that. And I said, I, Mark Caldwell, am responsible for the consequences of my actions. I'm not a victim. This is me. I've done this. How did I do this? Not taking care of my body. I'm overeating. I stop exercising all the time and I sit around too much. I'm where I am right now is I'm in a barn behind our house. This is my man cave. I wake up in the morning, I come out here. And I come out here and I watch television, I watch YouTube videos, I go down and do some things, but I have a lot of property to take care of, and that's always secondary. I'll always get to it later on in the day. So I'm being lazy about getting active, not going to the gym, not swimming. And worst of all, I'll admit here, because I'm one of these people that overshares, I was a heavy drinker of alcohol for 35 years. And it's never hard alcohol, except when I got on with the friends with the Long Island iced teas for a celebration or something like that. And then we polish off 12 pitchers, whatever that number is, right? But me, it was for wine. It was wine. Always white wines too. I like red wines, but white wines were my thing, to the point where in the worst of times, but for years in a row, I was drinking on average a couple of bottles a day, every day, 7 days a week. And every once in a while, like once every year or 18 months, I would say to myself, I need to prove to myself up here that I'm not an alcoholic, meaning physically addicted to the alcohol. So I would take a month off. I would prove to myself through one of these diets, right? I was going to not drink during that dieting phase. So I would go, boy, that's a lot of sharing, by the way, Carl. Yeah, that's pretty tough to say out loud. It's pretty tough to say out loud, because knowing that a lot of people could see this, right? It's embarrassing. I was a high functioning alcoholic. I also, on the business side, I started multiple companies. I've always had successful exits. I've sold those. I've led a very blessed financial life. I've gotten a lot of stuff done over these years, but it hasn't been through being thin. I'm the guy that would pay for my own first class upgrade because I didn't want to sit in the coach seat in the back because it was too tight. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm the one who has sold cars, sports cars that I love. And the last one was a Mercedes AMG GTS, a small, little, gorgeous little sports car with a bi-turbo V8, because I didn't fit in the damn seat anymore. I'm telling you, it's a call out to yourself. I'm Mark Caldwell and responsible for the consequences of my actions. I'm not a victim, right? So I'm saying these things. One is because maybe somebody watching says, hey, that's me. Hey, I have things like that. Or to the other side of it that goes, oh my God, that guy's sick. Like, yes, it's a sickness. It's total sickness. So again, in my business life, super high stress. I came out of the software industry at 25 years, thought I retired, got back in, built an industrial safety company, sold that. I've got over 2.1 million miles with Delta in the air. I've got, let alone the British Airways and every other airline you can possibly imagine, millions of miles in the air over my career, and always on the road, always high stress. What that's like when you're traveling all the time. Hotels every night, hotel food, the social atmosphere with the drinking and everything. It was terrible. And so back to August 28th.
It's very lonely as well, isn't it? So therefore, what do? You have a drink to comfort yourself.
Do you know what I'll say about this is my wife doesn't drink alcohol. Right. Never really has. So I think a lot about, as she'll see this video at some point, I think a lot about how she must have sat there all those nights over all those decades and said, what is he doing? Not only to himself, because that's very selfish, by the way. What's he doing? Not only the drinking, but the weight. What's he doing knowing his family has all, these heart disease? Her family has no heart disease in it. So I'm specifically, by the way, when I'm talking about all these issues, I haven't been particularly worried about diabetes. I've just kind of assumed I was going to get it someday, right? Yeah. I haven't really been worried about that. That's just kind of my assumption path. In that assumption path, though, I kept thinking, I don't want to have a heart attack. How do I get away from that eventuality? And even though I think down deep, I have always assumed that I would, right? And maybe in some weird psychopathic way, that's my way of just saying, hey, it's going to happen anyways. But I know from my logs, very aware, just tracking things to see, when and if I might wake up. But then again, we're also depending on our medical community to give us information that actually we can act upon that is in our best interest, right? And so one last thought there, with the government saying, here's the standard American diet to have a healthy lifestyle, that's a horrible disservice to everyone.
Yeah, that's a joke, and it's beyond belief what certain advice has done in those days. And it's no coincidence that the low fat diet comes in and dementia goes up, obesity goes up, heart condition issues go up. It's not a coincidence. It's just really bad, and I think influence from big business as well as some poor government decisions may well be an influence. So so you've given us the whole background, but what was the trigger? What was the trigger, or how did you discover the carnivore lifestyle? What was the crunch for you to do that change?
So there's a recurring theme with this August 28th of 2023. It actually started basically a week earlier on August 23rd. By the way, I started this diet August 29th of 2023. That's why I keep talking about this week.
Yeah, that's fine.
August 23rd, I got on the scales once again, and I was roughly 260 pounds. Again, going back to that, so in the 116 kilo range. And one of these times where I say no. And by the way, every diet I had tried prior was always one of these. As soon as there's no more wine in the wine fridge or wine out here at the barn, then I'll start the diet, right? So you're always, it's like saying, when I finish that last beer out of the case, then I'll start then. This is the first time, as like the night before, I had bought a case of wine that I brought home, and it's all still sitting, by the way, in the wine fridge at the house, all of it, right? It's not even tempting anymore, but the point is that I got up and went, no, because it was the idea of, all right, Thanksgiving's coming up in November, then we got Christmas, so I'll do like everybody does and say January 1, I'm going to start. And I looked in the mirror again and went, no, I'm responsible. This is my fault. I got to start. What if I don't make it until January 1? Whoa, there's an idea. what if I don't make it until January 1? Because I kept thinking, I'm looking at a ticking time bomb in the mirror right now. I don't know.
Yeah.
We're at the age, I mean, I know you and I are only a year apart. I turned 60 years old this year. The number of people that I've known since college, I'm not going to say it's hundreds. I'm saying there's been a number of people that I went to university with that aren't around anymore. It's a strangest thing. People that I know, very close friends of mine that have had bouts with, cancer or heart disease or many diabetics. I mean, of my group of folks that I went to college with, the roommates of mine, there are multiple of them that are type 2 diabetics. I'm not saying it's our fault. I'm saying we all are going to that phase now where we expect to have issues as we get older, right? And so you asked me a very specific question, what caused this? I decided that, during that week, I'm not going to tell you what days, I don't remember exactly what day it was. I think it was on the 23rd of August, was that I needed to get back in the pool, because that's been a recurring theme in my adult life too, is that when I start swimming again, the weight starts coming off. I become more health conscious. So I stopped the drinking for a while, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, until that phase ends, right? But I mean, it's a very healthy thing to do. And I started thinking for the very first time, Carl, that this may be that time that I jump in the pool and I'm swimming. We have an aquatic center, a very professional aquatic center near here down the road. And that's where I typically go. I'm a member there, always have been, right? As long as you have the membership at the gym, whether you go or not, right, you get healthier. So I thought about going back in the pool, and I kept thinking, this vision in my head kept going, the lifeguards diving into the water to save me as I'm having a massive heart attack in the water. Because I thought, it can't be healthy to go from 260 roughly pounds and going into a hardcore cardiac activity. I'm not talking about going into doggy paddling. I'm the guy that goes freestyle. I was a sprinter, right? So I go. So I, typically on a day, and I'm not a long distance swimmer, but when I go, I average, 2,000 meters a day in the pool every day when I swim. So again, the point is, I started thinking about swimming again, and I went, no, this time, again, I'm 58 at the time, because this is last year in 2023, turned 59 in November. So in August of this last year, I went, I've got to go see a cardiologist. I need to get on their radar because of my dad's history, his parents' history. Yeah. And so I went and set up an appointment with my local cardiologist through my insurance company. I'd never met one before, and went and sat down with him. Wonderful, neat guy, probably in his mid 40s or so, maybe late 40s at most. And he says, hey, before I do my examination, he says, let's talk about your family history. I went, oh, perfect, right? And he says, so tell me what's going on, anything related to heart disease in your family. First thing I said is, father's had 2 quadruple bypasses, he's got hypertension, and he literally interrupts me and says, Mark, his exact words, I want you on an all plant diet, no exceptions. I started laughing. I said, and and this is one of those things where, well, I don't eat plants. Like, I'm going on this carnivore diet. We'll talk about that in a second. I don't eat plants. He goes, what do you mean you don't eat plants? I said, I'm a carnivore. I'm going to go on this carnivore diet. And he says, yeah, what do I know? I'm just a medical doctor. I had to remind him that as much as I respect the fact that he's gone through school and done all these things, that I mean, that's why they call it practicing medicine, right? Is that this is, it's not, they haven't perfected it yet. I mean, how is it that, we look back at what they were saying 3 decades ago and we think it's barbaric. And I think 3 decades from now, we'll look back at what they're doing today and think it's barbaric. So, so my cardiologist said, I told him I want to get back in the pool and this is my worry. And so he ordered a cardiac stress test, and he ordered it's basically an MRI for the heart, which gives you a calcium score of your heart. So all these things I mentioned to you before, the obesity, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, arthritis on my knees, the gout, the kidney stones, the prediabetes that I was diagnosed with, right? All the medications that I'm on for all this. I'm on 4 medications for a prescription level NSAID for the knees. I'm on a statin. I'm on, what is the name of the medication it's called for? Lisinopril for the high blood pressure. Anyways, they go on all that. Turns out they do this cardiac scan. And right now, well, as of 5 months ago, my scan number was 343 on the cardiac scale. It is a non-zero number, meaning what? I have calcification of plaque in my heart arteries right now. Well, there's a wake-up call. So here I'm thinking, hey, there's this possibility I might have, heart disease, or I could get that someday. Oh no, I have it. I have it right now. And so you want to When I say this saved my life, if that score had been zero, that may have given me the license to keep doing what I was doing. Hey, maybe I'm going to dodge all this. Maybe it's, maybe this isn't going to hit me. And so I'm overweight, but that's not so much fun to look at for me, or I'm sure for my wife or anybody else around me. But at the end of the day, that's not as life-threatening in my mind than heart disease is, because that kills so many people. I mean, I know that heart attacks are one of the, I think it may be the number one medical killer of people here in the United States. And I know it's a problem in the UK as well, but certainly here it's on a lot of people's minds. To find out that I actually had calcium in my heart that's there and it can't be removed, and nothing I'm going to do now is going to get rid of that, spooked me hard, right? So that was the impetus to answer your question in a very roundabout way. The impetus to get started was learning about how I actually go after this and attack it. Now that's having a score of 343 out of how many? I don't know what that is. I just know it sounds. 343 is a big number. It's a big number to me, knowing that it's measurable, right? That's the whole point. Is now what do I do? So I've been keeping my logs. I got to take action. No more waiting till after Thanksgiving, waiting till Christmas. Today's the day. So I go back, and I figured today you'd ask me, so how did you find out about carnivore? I don't remember how I heard the word carnivore, but what I will tell you is this. I found this very interesting. I Googled, how do I find out what I was looking for on YouTube on a specific date? And I was able to go back last night, Carl, and on August 23rd of 2023, on YouTube, I searched for carnivore diet breakfast, because I remember distinctly thinking, well, this is an all meat diet. What can you eat for breakfast? Because I was typically, sometimes I would eat multiple meals a day. Sometimes but always a great big dinner. It's typically now, but I would snack all the time, right? So it's like, so breakfast might mean a lot of things to me. It might mean oatmeal and yogurt, or it might be a bunch of bacon and eggs, or bacon and eggs and oatmeal and yogurt and everything else. I mean, toast, and I just eat. A typical breakfast for me, now that I'm into this conversation, a typical breakfast for me would be, I get out to the barn here, and if I'm feeling hungry, which is a pretty normal thing, hey, I got to run to Home Depot to grab something. So I'll stop by McDonald's and get 2 or 3 or 4 sausage egg McMuffins, because they're delicious. And I still love sausage McMuffins with egg. And the English muffins are probably my favorite part, just doused in butter. But anyways, carnivore diet breakfast. My very next, and of course it comes up with your search results. The very next thing I after watching that video, I searched for is Joe Rogan carnivore diet. Right. The very next video I watched, according to YouTube, was the Jordan Peterson Joe Rogan interview.
And that was the one that triggered me.
I found out that's very common if people get turned on to this, because Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson talk about this. And if anybody out there knows about Jordan Peterson and his physically, and then his daughter Michaela, what she's gone through. And what the carnivore diet has done for them. So that's the answer to your question, was starting to think, oh, this is for real now.
So it sounds like you did it exactly as I did, and went bang straight into it. No gradual, just straight into it. This is it. I'm doing this. Going to see how it goes.
Do you remember personality?
Did you have any of the the impacts that people talk about in terms of the flu or the bowel issues or the diarrhea?
Oh yeah, sure. So I watched a ton of videos in that next several days. And so that was all on August 23rd. I told you about, and August 27th is when I watched the Peterson carnivore diet video. And on the day of August 28th is when I went 257.1. August 29th in the morning was my first day on carnivore. And I didn't eat breakfast. I waited until dinner. This whole idea of OMAD, 1 meal a day, was very intriguing to me, because I was, some of the videos I was watching talked about the importance of intermittent fasting. And I had one of my sons, I have 3 sons, 3 grown sons, 32, 33, and 35. One of my middle son, Neil, had been doing intermittent fasting and had a lot of luck just losing weight. And he wasn't big, but he was a little overweight, but had lost a tremendous amount of weight for him, for his size, just through eating, containing his eating within a small window. that's a recurring theme with me today, although less strict. Starting carnivore diet, I heard about some of these issues you're talking about, Carl, and I will say this. Everyone that I've known that has said, I think I'm going to try this, I always warn them that, hey, just expect you're going to have something like the keto flu. Well, what is that? I mean, your body's going to go through a withdrawal process from the carbs. I didn't really know. I said those words. I don't really know what that meant. Oh my gosh, yes. I had for 3 or 4 days, it wasn't longer than that. For the first 3 or 4 days, didn't hit me for, I think, until day 2. I would say day 2 through day 5, maybe into day 6. I had headaches. I felt lethargic. I didn't feel great. And I'm one of these guys, maybe you can tell already. I was worried about, my energy level this morning because it's still only 10 after 7 here. I'm a hyper passionate person. I've always been a very passionate person about everything, but I didn't feel that excitement and that passion and that energy that I typically have. So what I can't tell you is that my energy levels have skyrocketed, because this has always been me. It's a wonder that my metabolism hasn't been so high that I kept on any weight on anyways. But at the end of the day, that 4 or 5 days, 3 or 4 or 5 days, I was not feeling this type of energy. Getting through that.
It's like interviewing Tigger.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. So I used those days to kind of go through the refrigerators, to go the one out here in the barn, the one at the house, of course, the conversations with my wife. I'm sure she's tired of hearing about everything carnivore. I mean, it's just the conversation. It's every time I call my parents, my parents live up in New Jersey. I'm down here in Georgia. Every day we get on the phone, this is the topic of discussion. Let me tell you my weight was yesterday. Let me tell you, how are your blood sugars? How is your blood pressure? And it's everything I talk about, right? Because I am so intrigued, so interested in the results of the diet. It's not the food, and I'll tell you why in a second. It's not the food. It's the diet. It's the results that I'm excited about. It's not what I eat, right? So for me, the biggest change was, and I wonder, part of what I was going through, I'm sure during that first 3 or 4 or 5 days, Carl, was the withdrawals from, I'm not drinking any alcohol. I made the decision on August 29th. That's the last day I'll drink alcohol. Not like my normal diets, not until I hit this milestone, and then I'll go, give myself a glass of wine or a bottle of wine or 3, is I'm not drinking alcohol again. I have heart disease.
Yeah.
I have heart disease, right? That's a very weird thing to look in the mirror and say to yourself that, no, this is not an if anymore. This is here. Now the question is, how do I live the most healthy life I can moving forward so I don't exacerbate the heart disease and I don't die of heart disease? I don't know that that'll happen or it won't happen, but I'm watching a lot of pretty smart people. And yet I'm reminded when I say that of the entire medical community, the entire sector of the medical community that's stuck in the 1970s teachings that are so unhealthy for the American public. I can only speak to what's going on here, not for the UK, but this is a worldwide phenomenon.
As I say, we can only speak from our own experiences, and we're neither of us are medically trained. So, what we're saying is we are our own laboratory. We are our own test sites.
I told you I have my notes here. So on my Listerine bottle, here's my notes.
Vegan or carnivore, lovely.
Which is exactly what I just said, right? Is that listening to our medical professionals and trying to decide what's healthy or not healthy for the public.
Yeah.
I watched this really interesting video of a physician, and he said, I'm going to ask you a very simple question. I want you to think about it. He's talking to the audience. He's not doing an interview. He's just talking like if you were talking to the audience. And he said, so which is more healthy? A carnivore, these are opposite spectrum on the spectrum, right? Carnivore diet or a vegan diet? And it's the first time I had ever heard it asked that way. Such a simple question. And I think I've always was taught, of course, vegan, plant-based diets are obviously more healthy than, it would be a dream come true if you could just eat meat all day. I love meat. Right. And that's always been when I've gone on the eat to live diets in the past, it's cut out all the meats and cut out all the fats, especially the first 6 weeks. It's no meat, no fats, no nuts, no nothing, right? Cutting all that crap out. So you're eating all the plants you can eat, no limit on the plants, but nothing with starches, nothing with, the most restrictive type. And he says, they're both equally healthy. He says, it's whatever you stay on. What they have in common is no carbohydrates. I went, oh, that's a great point. If you are somebody that wants to be on a strict diet and stay away from carbs, and that diet is vegan, all the power to you. Go do your thing. Now you'll find people like Dr. Chafee who will say plants are trying to kill you, and so he's got his own particular view on that. And I think that there's a lot of logic to that. I can't just. I'm living on a bunch of wood. If I look out the window right now, the sun is coming up. I'll point you outside. See out in the woods. If I walked out in the woods right now, I can tell you, and I had to go forage for myself and eat what's out there to live, I'm done for anyways, because I don't know what I pick up off the ground that's going to poison me and kill me out there, right?
Exactly.
I go to the grocery store to get that. And so my point is that you can say plants are good for you, but it depends on which plants.
Well, I always make this point, and that I think with the exception to gambling addiction, all other addictions that I can think of are got a plant related. So you go from coffee, tobacco, you've got all the various drugs, you've got all the poisons, all are plant-based. And that tells you something. I've never heard of anyone addicted to steak yet.
I think that that's a really good point. And if you listen to Dr. Chafee, very interesting guy, by the way, I find him extremely credible, especially because he's been a carnivore for over 20 years now. That's commitment. You can't say plants are healthy for you without saying which plants.
Yes.
And my point is, I can't walk out into the woods here and just eat plants. There's lots of plants on my property, and I'm sure a lot of them will kill me. I don't feel comfortable walking up to a bush that has berries on it, not knowing what that is, and putting that in my mouth. I don't know if that'll kill me right there. No different than I know that the snake out there is not going to kill me. I'm trying to think of what animals I could eat that I don't know whether it'll kill me or not. I can't think of
anything. I think of is probably uncooked pork or chicken, if it's but then saying that, I did an interview of a raw meat eater, and he eats raw chicken. So,
interesting. I hadn't really thought about that before, but I certainly have far more choices in terms of that in my mind. Anyways, I don't know where I was going with all that.
And like you, I'm not knocking the veganism either, because I had a period of time. I saw that Forks Over Knives documentary, and that was it. I was hooked, and I went vegan, and I yes, I lost weight, but I was hungry the whole time. On this lifestyle, I ate. I'm trying to think when I did eat. I'm having to think back when I last ate, and that's how it is. There's no sort of immediate jump out at you. So
here's what I will. I always go back to my logs just to make a point, right? Is back in 2018, I learned about Eat to Live, the Eat to Live diet, bought the book, and told everybody about this diet. Like some people are going to say watching this, is that now he's telling everybody about carnivore. Who knows? You'll be off of that in 6 months. I want to go back to that comment here in a second. So Eat to Live, I have lots of logs on Eat to Live. And I can tell you on that diet, the first 6 weeks, very, very strict. And I was really good. Again, light switch personality, either do it or I don't, right? So when I got into the first 6 weeks of this, and that's the 6-week challenge, is I'm nutty about it. And on each time I've done it, I've lost 30 plus pounds in the first 6 weeks. That's pretty significant. You're talking about what, 12, 13 kilos in 6 weeks every time. So I'm a big believer in that you can lose a weight on all these diets. And I'm not poo-pooing the Eat to Live diet for somebody who naturally likes eating plants, and that is something that is part of a lifestyle that they enjoy. All the power to you. To your point, Carl, it was brutal for me. It was horrible for me. I found myself, I swear to God, I am not making this up, I found myself using liquid smoke and watching a video on how to make carrots taste like hot dogs. You can Google it. It's part of the vegan recipes. My wife's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm trying to make hot dogs." And of course, I can have the buns, the bread, and all that kind of stuff. It's part of the diet, right? I can have the hot dog bun, and I'm laying the carrot in the hot dog bun, and I'm going, "You've got to be kidding me!" Was the worst for me every time, and it kept me from wanting to go on it. I knew the results would be good, that I would lose a bunch of weight, but I don't know that I was healthier.
See,
I don't know that I was healthier.
that's one of my bugbears with the vegan side of it. If you're vegan, I've got full respect for you. That's your choice. Do it. Don't try and make bacon out of plants, or as you put, hot dogs out of plants. If you don't want to eat meat, don't then try and mimic something that turns into meat or tries to mimic meat. I don't get it. I don't ask someone to make me a steak in the shape of a carrot. You know, it just doesn't work.
It doesn't.
See, for me, the important thing is to get rid of the ultra high processed foods, because in the ultra high processed foods is where all the hidden nasties are, the sugars, the oils and all those elements in there. So if someone chooses to go vegan, good for you. And if it works for you, good on you. I did that. I've tried it. I had a level of success, but never was satisfied, never was happy, was grumpy as hell. This diet is a total game changer for me. And that's why I've done a Carnivore Nation and not a Vegan Nation YouTube channel.